Today, you're going to see the greatest acting monologues in film history. The ones where performances reached an extreme level of intensity, delivering messages that transcend cinema. These are moments where film stops being entertainment and becomes a mirror, a scream, a confession. Today on Cine Prime.
Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
I don't know if Mama was right or if it's Lieutenant Dan.
Forrest Gump has many unforgettable moments, but none like the monologue he dedicates to Jenny, standing by her grave. It's probably the most honest scene in the entire film, because there's no humor left, no anecdotes, just a broken man speaking from the bottom of his soul. Tom Hanks doesn't act as Forrest, he is Forrest. There are no grand gestures or forced emotion, just silence, restraint, truth. Every word feels like it comes from someone who doesn't fully understand the pain he feels, but feels it anyway. His voice breaks, but doesn't collapse. He looks down, as if afraid of what he feels. He's not dramatizing, he's confessing. And when he says, "I don't know if we each have a destiny, or if we're all just floating around accidental-like on a breeze," he's not asking, he's pleading. It's the doubt of someone who's lost too much, and is still trying to make sense of it all. That moment doesn't try to move you, but it does, because it's intimate, sincere, devastating. It's the kind of scene where the actor disappears, and what remains is just a person speaking to someone who's no longer there, with love, with guilt, with a tenderness that, without saying so, is a goodbye. And the worst part, knowing no one will ever answer.
I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it.
Raging Bull doesn't end with a fight or a redemption arc. It ends with a mirror, with Jake LaMotta, alone, older, repeating words that aren't even his. It's an intimate, dry monologue that doesn't scream, but it bleeds. Robert De Niro stands in front of a mirror rehearsing a scene, but what he's really doing is facing himself. He quotes a line from On the Waterfront.
It was you, Charlie. You was my brother.
But he says it without conviction, as if he's only now understanding what he lost, far too late. There are no tears, no explicit regret. Just a man who fell out of the ring years ago, now trying to rebuild himself with what little he has left. Words, gestures, reflections. His fists no longer punch, but the guilt still weighs him down. De Niro doesn't play a boxer, he plays the echo of one. What's left when the glory fades. His voice is tight, his eyes unfocused. And the hardest part is this: there's no response, only silence, one that hurts more than any blow. And right there, in that solitude before the mirror, we understand everything. Jake isn't rehearsing, he's confessing, even if it's far too late.
You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
Rocky Balboa isn't a movie about boxing. It's a movie about growing old with dignity. And its most iconic monologue doesn't happen in a ring. It happens on the street when Rocky talks to his son. He tells him life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, that it'll hit harder than anything else, that it's not about how hard you can hit, but about how much you can take and keep moving forward. The line is part of pop culture now, but what matters isn't the words, it's how he says them. Stallone doesn't overact. He doesn't yell. He doesn't preach. He speaks like a tired father, disappointed, but still holding on to belief. There's pause, weight, contained sadness. He's not trying to inspire. He is inspiring, because he's honest. This monologue is more than motivational. It's a declaration of principles, of struggle, of identity, of refusing to blame the world for what you haven't achieved. And it's also Rocky speaking to himself, one last time, reminding himself of who he once was.
You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns.
In A Few Good Men, the trial isn't decided by evidence, it's decided by emotion. And everything explodes in the confrontation between Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, with that monologue that made history. When Nicholson, playing Colonel Jessup, faces Cruise, he's not just defending his honor, he's revealing a truth everyone's afraid to hear.
You can't handle the truth!
That line isn't just a challenge. It's the cry of a man who's lived a lie so huge that exposing it could collapse the world around him. His presence says it all. The power, the arrogance, the conviction of someone who believes he's right, even if he's morally indefensible. It's more than a monologue. It's an assault on morality, on justice, on truth itself. The way Nicholson delivers it, with that mix of fury and coldness, turns the line into a war cry, an explosion of bottled-up frustration. What's at stake isn't just one life, it's the entire system. That moment doesn't try to make you like the character. It wants you to understand him, and when he shouts, it's because he knows there's no turning back.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody instead of a bum.
On the Waterfront has one of the most heartbreaking scenes in cinema history. Inside a car, rain pouring outside, and an uncomfortable silence between brothers, Terry Malloy, played by Marlon Brando, breaks down. And he does it with a monologue that's almost a whisper, but hits like a punch to the gut. He doesn't yell. He doesn't defend himself. He just mourns. Terry isn't looking for revenge. He's looking for understanding. He speaks to his brother as if speaking to the past, to all the wrong choices, to the glory stolen from him, to what could have been and wasn't. Brando doesn't act. He breathes pain. He looks with the eyes of someone who's lost everything and knows it. The monologue isn't long, but every word echoes frustration and resignation. And in that back seat, head lowered, voice broken, he creates one of the most human moments ever captured on film. There's no flashy editing, just two brothers, a steering wheel, and a truth too painful to be shouted.
But there is nothing like the sight of an amputated spirit. There is no prosthetic for that.
And the most tragic part is this: there's no redemption, only honesty. Scent of a Woman has one of the most powerful monologues in cinema. Frank Slade, a blind lieutenant colonel furious with the world, walks in to defend a young man at risk of being expelled for telling the truth. And he does it with no filters, no diplomacy, with an intensity that splits the room in two. Al Pacino doesn't act. He charges. He walks as if his cane were a sword and every word a warning. What starts as a defense becomes a direct accusation against the system. He's not just protecting the student. He's defending a way of life, one that almost no one respects anymore, but one he refuses to let go of. His face holds rage. His voice holds wounds. But above all, conviction. Because what's at stake isn't just an unfair punishment. It's the foundation of everything: dignity, loyalty, the courage to stand firm when everyone else bends out of fear. It's the moment a man destroyed on the inside remembers who he used to be, and he remembers by shouting. Because even though he's blind, that day, in that room, he's the only one who truly sees what matters. It's not a speech, it's a moral roar, and no one dares interrupt it.
You train young men to drop fire on people, but their commanders won't allow them to write fuck.
Marlon Brando doesn't act, he commands. When his character, Colonel Kurtz, finally appears after hours of jungle, war, and madness, there is no redemption, no explanation, just words wrapped in shadow. The monologue doesn't shout, it crawls. And what he says isn't a confession, it's a diagnosis of war, of the soul, of the fake civilization that orders killings from behind desks, yet takes offense at a word written on a bomb. Kurtz hasn't gone insane, he's understood, and that's far more terrifying. Brando speaks from the darkness, like a ghost. He weighs every syllable. Each pause seems to carry the weight of a ton. His voice is low, but his words stay with you. He doesn't justify, he describes, remembers, exposes, as if sculpting himself with every phrase. It's the portrait of a man who's seen too much, who crossed a line and never came back. And in telling it, he's not trying to drag anyone with him. He just wants someone to listen, to understand that the true horror isn't war, it's what we're capable of doing, rationally. And when the end comes, there's no general left, just a whisper.
All those moments will be lost in time like tears in rain.
Blade Runner doesn't end with a battle. It ends with one of the most unexpected and devastating monologues in film history. Roy Batty, the antagonist for the entire film, is about to die. And in that moment, he doesn't take revenge. He doesn't strike. He simply says what no one expects, that he's seen things no one would believe, things that will disappear with him. And with that line, everything changes. That monologue doesn't just redefine the character, it redefines the whole movie. Because up to that point, Roy seemed like a villain, cold, lethal, inhuman. But as he speaks of what he's seen, of what he's about to lose, he becomes more human than the humans who made him. The scene is simple, a tight shot, rain, blood, ragged breathing. But its impact is massive. Rutger Hauer partly improvised it, and turned it into history. What he says isn't just science fiction. It's a raw reflection on death, memory, and oblivion. That moment turned a replicant into a symbol of consciousness, of identity, of what it really means to be alive. There's no epic music, no redemption, just a man, or something we're no longer sure is a man, facing the end with more humanity than anyone else.
You're just a kid. You don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about.
In Good Will Hunting, Robin Williams doesn't play a part. He speaks as if he were alone with the viewer. In the park bench scene, his character, Sean, gives Will a lesson no book could ever teach. Will is brilliant. He knows history, art, philosophy, but he knows nothing about life, and Sean tells him that, without shouting, without humiliating him, just with truth. He speaks of love, of pain, of loss, of sitting by a hospital bed. He reminds him that none of that comes from reading. It comes from living. And it hurts. The power isn't in the volume. It's in the silence that follows. Because for the first time, Will doesn't answer. He can't. Someone has looked him in the eye, without fear, and told him exactly what he needed to hear. It's one of the most human monologues in cinema. It doesn't try to shine, it tries to break through a shell, and it does. In under 3 minutes, Robin Williams delivers a masterclass in humility, experience, and empathy, not with theory, with scars. That moment doesn't just change the character, it changes the whole movie, because that's when Will's journey finally begins. And it's not a speech, it's a truth.
Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
The Great Dictator doesn't just have a great speech, it has the greatest monologue in film history. The world engulfed in the Second World War and Nazism. Chaplin, a comedian known for never speaking on screen, breaks his silence, and does so to deliver a message that still sends chills today. The final speech doesn't belong to the character. It's Chaplin speaking as a human being. He doesn't act, he pleads for freedom, for empathy, against hatred, Nazism, dehumanization. He begs us to stop being machines and to become people again. There are no effects, no epic score, just a voice, a face, and a steady camera. And yet, it's more powerful than any war climax, because it's not trying to entertain, it's trying to awaken. In that moment, cinema stopped being spectacle, it became conscience. And what Chaplin said more than 80 years ago is still urgent today, because it wasn't a script, it was an act of courage. That monologue doesn't just close a film, it opens a conversation that should never end. And that's why it remains, and will remain for a long time, the greatest ever spoken on screen.